China Mulls levying the death penalty against those using child prostitutes. Human Rights Watch's Wang joins the podcast discussing if that will be enough. Why is there angst among the United States allies in the South China Sea? Plus, Obama rings up Shinzo Abe to discuss cybercrimes. Those stories are next. This is the Asia Brief. Greetings and salutations, my excellent friends. Steve Miller here on this Thursday, August 27th, 2015. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's go ahead and begin with our story from China. Personally, I don't care what two adults do behind closed doors, as long as it's consensual. That extends to those who engage in the world's oldest profession, but I do draw a very firm line when someone is forced into that life against their will, especially when it's a child. It's now being reported that China's National People's Congress Standing Committee debated repealing the crime of sex with underage prostitutes and reclassifying it as rape, a crime that carries the death penalty. Jia Chunmei, a prosecutor from Hebei province last year, said, quote, "There is no need to define such a crime. Having sex with minors should be considered rape, no matter who she is and what she does." End quote. But how prevalent is child prostitution in China?
Well, actually, I think the crime, even though the crime that we're talking about has to do with quote-unquote prostitution.
Maya Wang, researcher with Human Rights Watch's Asia Division.
What usually happens in China these days that got a lot of attention is that young girls are raped especially in rural areas, by people who are, by men, older men who are more powerful than they are. They're teachers, principals, local government officials, and so on. Sometimes the news pieces are often very unclear, but there is sometimes there's some kind of organization involved. So, for example, the principal might have brought the girls to a hotel somewhere else, involving money and so on. So it's never very clear the kind of. So I wouldn't really kind of call it child prostitution, but it's more, I think, accurately described as kind of the abuse of power of people in position, exploiting girls who often don't have the parents around in rural areas, because often these girls are children of migrant workers. Their parents work very far away.
Wang says that over the years, many men received relatively light sentences for these horrific acts, which might have been the impetus for the current round of discussions.
The reason why a lot of domestic women's groups have been pushing for this change is because they think that the current crime of prostitution of young girls is considered a lesser crime. So offenders generally get between 5 to 7 years of sentence, whereas a rape crime is a lot heavier. So it gives the impression for potential offenders that you can get away a lot easier with a lesser sentence, especially if you're a local government official with having sex with girls under age 14. So that's kind of the reason why this is being pushed. And as you've said, so I think it's positive to kind of eliminate that difference, or send a clear signal that sex with girls under 14 is now considered a crime in China. But I mean, there are a number of problems with the change. I mean, first of all, as you said, we don't we oppose the death penalty, and also the article now regarding rape actually only really involves only protects girls and women. It doesn't protect boys, for example, from from rape. And I think finally, the problem of sexual assault of girls in China, of young children in China, is just part of is a bigger problem that a legal change is only going to change only one part of that puzzle, and in order to kind of solve that problem, which the public considers to be quite endemic, we would need kind of other mechanism changes, for example, especially the protection of girls who don't have their parents around.
Whatever you want to call it, reclassification of the current crime of rape or separating rape of minors into its own law, this only addresses the punishment of those perpetrating the crime and does nothing to prevent it.
Well, I mean, I think that's where the problem lies. So the legal change is getting a lot of attention because, I mean, usually when these changes happen, it gets into the news. But the whole problem of children being sexually assaulted in China is much broader. It has to do with kind of lack of an effective child protection mechanism or across the country. It has to do with the fact that many of the victims of child sex abuse are often girls without guardians or of parents in rural areas, and there is really no kind of effective support, protection mechanism to check on them, to ensure that, for the victims of child sex abuse, there is psychological support, counseling. There's just basically nothing either to protect them before or to protect them and rehabilitate them afterwards. So China is a long way to go in both protecting and preventing these crimes and in helping victims of these crimes to kind of pick up their lives again.
Ah, yes, the South China Sea, an area of the region that always has something worth talking about. Recently, Admiral Scott H. Swift, the United States Navy's Pacific Fleet commander, responded to a question posed by Voice of America's Steve Herman about some of the doubt and skepticism of America's so-called Asia pivot.
It's less a reflection of what the United States' ability is to support the refocus. It's more of a reflection of the angst in the theater, as you suggest. Many in the countries are concerned about what the future is, and many of them are turning to the United States as a continued guarantor of the stability that they've enjoyed throughout the region, certainly for the last 70 years.
East-West Institute's Jonathan Miller added his thoughts via email. Quote, "While it is true that the official messaging from the U.S. government acknowledges that Beijing is not the only claimant engaged in land reclamation, the scale and capacity of its efforts is widely disproportionate to that of the other states in the region, such as Vietnam and the Philippines. China's activities may have slowed for a time in this regard, but that is mainly due to the fact that so much of the dredging is already complete. Beijing is now looking to solidify its reclamation through usable airstrips and the forced projection in the South China Sea. Obviously, this has created unease among U.S. allies and partners in the region, most evidently with the Philippines. The regional states also remain wary that Beijing may impose a unilateral air defense identification zone in the coming months, a significant provocation that would mirror its decision to impose an ADIZ in the East China Sea in late 2013, in reference to its dispute with Japan over the Senkaku Islands." End quote. But as they say, proof is in the pudding. China has pulled out its own experts and claims its actions are completely legal, meaning we are steadily heading towards, at the very least, an ideological showdown in the disputed waters, and one that's long overdue. While the relationship between Washington and Tokyo has generally been favorable, over the last month it has been, well, a bit bumpy. WikiLeaks previously published documents saying that the United States spied on 35 companies, government ministries, and individuals in Japan. These clandestine efforts included U.S.-Japan relations, trade negotiations, and climate change strategy. The strained relationship with Tokyo prompted President Obama to discuss the situation with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Tokyo government spokesman Yoshihide Suga said Obama was very sorry, but the White House has yet to comment on the discussion. Since the White House hasn't commented on the phone call, it's still unclear what was actually said. However, I do suspect there was some form of regret offered up by President Obama. But keep in mind, we see all major powers of the world today conducting various forms of cyber espionage. It's actually par for the course. The U.S. simply got caught and needed to say those magic words. What will be interesting to watch is if Obama can get a similar statement out of Chinese President Xi Jinping on his upcoming visit to Washington. My money's on no. Well, my friends, those are today's stories. I hope you'll take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments on Facebook or Twitter. The Asia Brief is a special feature of the Asia News Weekly podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it with your friends, and if you haven't, subscribe. Subscribing is free, and when you do, the next episode is delivered automatically to you. You can subscribe on our website, asianewsweekly.net, or in your favorite podcast application. You can also keep up with more news from the region by following Asia News Weekly on Facebook or Twitter. And if you have any comments, questions, or feedback, be sure to drop us a line. That email address is podcast@asianewsweekly.net. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, remember to be true to yourself and to always be awesome.